Hello and welcome to chapter 32 of the Flutter course. In the previous chapters, we've been talking quite a lot about our node service and creating stream controller in order to populate the stream controller with the nodes. And we also have a buffer locally called _nodes in our node service. And so we're kind of like working with our nodes in a really good and organic way. And we also work with the new noteview.dart file where we created a stateful widget that had a text editing controller and also allowed the user to enter some text. We manage even to save that text as a new note into the database. So we've done quite a lot. However, what wasn't so much fun was that it was a little bit of an anticlimax in that we are able to create notes, but we're not able to actually display them. So we're populating the database with new notes, but no one is able to show them on the screen. And that's what we're going to take care of in this chapter. So let me bring the code that we've written so far to the screen here. And I'm going to clear this git status just to make sure everything's working fine. Yep. So the Visual Studio Code, I'm going to bring strcpy to the right-hand side. And we have to now talk about a little problem that we have with our nodes service. You see, if you look at the code here, I'm going to increase the size so you see better. So if you have a look at our node service, we have this shared instance that we've created here. Okay, so whenever somebody says node service parenthesis, then they're actually not creating a new instance. They're not creating a new instance of node service, but they're going through this factory initializer, which in turn calls this shared static final, which in turn calls this internal or private constructor. That means we've created a singleton. So creating a node service over and over again is not going to create a new instance. It's just going to get the same shared instance. And then whoever then starts reading our, you see all nodes in here property, all nodes is delegating its responsibility to the node stream controller or stream. However, our node stream controller is a broadcast stream controller. And what that means is that a stream controller that doesn't really hold on to its current value for new listeners. So let's say you have a stream controller that is sitting here and you start listening to events to that stream controller from one place. And then an event comes into the stream controller and stream controller says, I have one listener right here. I'm going to delegate this information to that listener. All looks fine. However, after the propagation of this event into the stream controller is not going to hold on to this value when a new listener comes in from another side. So any new listener to your broadcast stream controller is not going to be informed of the current information which is populated in that stream controller. So if you're familiar with, for instance, reactive programming with Rx, you may know this as a published subject. And the same is true if you're, for instance, using Rx Java or Rx Kotlin, Rx Swift. Even if you're doing like combined programming with Swift UI, you will know these as like published subjects. So a stream controller that is broadcast is not going to hold on to its current value for new listeners. We need to remedy that, and the way to do that is just to move the initialization of node stream controller to our initializer right here, as we'll soon see. So I'm going to do a little bit of a shuffling of screen sizes in here. All right, so as the caption indicates, what we need to do is we need to make this nodes stream controller, which is, let's see where it is. It's right here. We need to make it a late final. So grab the data type from where it is and just say late final, put the data type in here, and then remove the equal. All right, so now it is our responsibility to ensure that this node stream controller is actually initialized upon constructing a new instance of our node service, okay? So let's go ahead and do that inside shared instance, which is right here. So what we need to do now is to say node stream controller is a stream controller list of database node. And then we do the exact same thing as we did before using broadcast. However, what we're going to do in here is to use a property inside the broadcast stream listener called onListen. So this onListen callback is going to get called whenever a new listener subscribes to our node stream controller's stream. So upon this happening, we need to ensure that our node stream controller's stream is populated with all the values that we've currently read from the database. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're just going to go ahead and say nodes stream controller sync add nodes, just like that. All right. So this ensures anyone who starts listening to our to this property all nodes, which in turn uses the node stream controller. If it's a new subscriber, then it's going to the on listen callback is going to get called, and then we're going to populate our stream controllers a stream with those nodes that we've already read from the database. Okay, let's now move to the next node before we can actually get on with the rest of this chapter. As the caption indicates, it says we shouldn't close the DB upon hot reload. After opening DB, we shouldn't close it. Otherwise, upon every reload, it gets closed. So the problem that I'm referring to is inside our nodes view, and it is right here inside our dispose. So upon doing hot reload, what we're doing is that we're saying node service close, which in turn is going to actually close the database. But remember, node service was and is supposed to be a singleton where upon creation and upon doing an open one time, it should keep its state. So we shouldn't play with closing of the database inside any of our widgets, because that is going to interfere with the internals and how the node service is actually supposed to work. So what we're going to do, as you can see, since this post function in here, the overriding of the dispose function, the only thing it was actually doing was to close a node services database. We're just going to remove this function for now because we have nothing else to dispose of at the moment in our nodes view. All right. So what we need to do is actually get to the meat of this section, which I'm so excited about, or this chapter. And that is to start working with the list view. And what we need to do is to make sure that we have a list that we can grab the data that comes from our stream here, stream builder. You can see it reads all the nodes. And right now we're just saying waiting for all nodes. So we're going to change that. And instead, we're actually going to start using something called a list view. Now, list view in Flutter is an amazing widget, which I can actually show you here. So if you just type list view and then command and click, or control click on Linux and Windows, you can see it's a box scroll view, extends box scroll view, which in turn is a scroll view, which in turn is a stateless widget. So a list view has some really great functionality that it exposes using its builder. You can see here it has a builder function, and I believe it's a static function here, or it's actually constructor. Great. Okay. So it has a builder, and inside your builder, you will be able to pass two important parameters to this list view. So we're going to say we return a list view instead of that little text that we had, which right now says waiting for all nodes. In here, we're going to say we have two parameters. First, we are going to tell it how many items it has to render on the screen. So we're going to say item count. All right. And for the item count, we need to actually listen for this snapshots data. So remember, the stream builder at the moment is listening for all nodes. And so that means the data that comes from snapshot is actually going to be your all the nodes that we've read from the database. So what we need to do now is just to ensure that upon waiting in here, so I'm going to actually remove this, and I'm going to say if snapshot has data. So that's a property on your snapshot that exposes whether the snapshot has actually can actually provide you with some data. And I'm going to put an else in here. And upon else, we're also going to say return const circular progress indicator. Okay. And if the snapshot has any data, then let's grab that data. So I'm just going to say final all nodes is snapshot.data as a list of database nodes. All right. And what we could do, we could just say return const text got all the nodes, something like that. And we could actually print these nodes to the screen if you want to. So we could say print nodes. And I'm going to bring the debug console up. Then I'm going to clear the logs and change the screen layout so you see it better. And I'm just going to do Command S. All right. And I can see at the moment it's just saying your notes. So meaning that we don't actually have any notes. So if I go in here, then you can see all of a sudden we got a new note populated into the database just because I went here and I said I'm printing some notes. So I'm going to say hello. Okay. You can see as I'm changing this, our snapshot is actually getting updated with new information and it's constantly printing, and it's the note ID is the same, and you can see its text is actually changing. And if I go out, then you can see, well, it's just at the moment says got all the notes, meaning that you have some notes. So if you're seeing a circular progress indicator instead of like a text at the moment that we're saying got all the notes, it's probably because you were like me and you didn't have any notes in the database. All right. Okay, now we have all the notes. So how do we then render these? So what we need to do in here, we're going to say return list view. I'm going to change the screen layout. Let's say list view builder. And you remember I mentioned before, we need to populate this list view with two important parameters. One is the item count. And at the moment, the item count is all nodes count length. And then we have our item builder. Get some help from your editor to complete this. You get a build context as the first parameter of type context, and then you get an index, okay? Now, inside your item builder, your job is, if you look at the signature of item builder, it says it's a function that takes two parameters, a build context and an integer for the index, and it has to return a widget, you see here. So you could return anything in here. You could just say return text item, something like that. Okay. It's not going to look so pretty though. And actually I can see maybe, did we lose our item maybe in here? It is possible that there is something wrong with our notes view, that it's like deleting the notes. It could be. So I'm just going to do a hot reload here. And my strcpy may actually die. No, but it worked without a problem. So we have an item. So if that's what you're also seeing, maybe you could do a hot reload because we've changed our notes service. So it could be the problem that we just needed to do a hot reload for this unlisten to actually get called. All right. So that's what we're seeing at the moment. So I can see item in here, and I'm going to press the plus button. And I'm going to say hello world in here. And I'm going to go out, and all of a sudden you see two items appearing in here, okay? But this is not so pretty because displaying text on the screen is not so nice, and you won't be able to easily add interactions to these items, because what we want ideally is for these items to appear on the list, and then they have like their own sizing, so they have a good height so that they are separated a little bit from each other. And as you'll see in the next chapter, we're going to work with deleting these items. So we want the ability for the user to see some sort of an icon next to each item, using which he or she can click on that icon and delete the item. So text in itself is not going to be able to provide us with all that functionality that we need. So what we need is a little bit more sophisticated widget, and it is called ListTile. So let's do that. Let's just say we return a ListTile. Okay, and our ListTile is going to have a title. So that's the only thing at the moment we're going to provide it with. And you can see it's a widget. And for the widget of this list, for the title of this ListTile, we're going to use text right there. Okay, and I'm going to put some commas in there. So for the text, what we're going to say then is the text in itself is we want to grab the text that is entered in that note. So you see, we have all the notes, but we don't have the current note. So the current note that we're actually reading, its index is going to be provided to us using this item builder's index. So let's go and say final notes is all notes at that index. So that's the current note that we're returning a list tile for. Okay, its text is going to be the note text, as you can see here. I can see I've written tile here, but it should be title. And in here, we have to have a semicolon. All right. So if I do Command S in here, you can see now we have very I mean, a lot nicer and prettier versions of those texts. And you can see that they're right here. It says hello and hello world. And those are the texts that we entered. You can actually test that and say, my new note is entered here. And by pressing the back button, you'll see that your note is appearing on the screen. All right. But what we want to do here is if you enter a lot of text uh, in your notes. So if I go and say here is a very long text that I've entered and I don't want it all to be displayed in one tile on the notes view. So we have now a note that is quite large, but this is in itself is going to break a little bit our layout. You see, in our notes list, we don't want to render the entire note. We somehow want to cap the amount of information that we're displaying to a size that is reasonable. And since our notes don't have titles, we could infer the content of the note by simply rendering just one line of text. And the user should be able to then say, oh, that's what I've written kind of in my note. And as you'll see in the later chapters, we are going to allow the user to also click on or tap on these existing notes in order to go and see more information about them. So it's not the end of the world if we don't display like the entire note to the user. And as you'll see, when users start to enter more and more information in their notes, it's actually not desirable to render the entire note, because imagine a note is 2 pages long. Are you going to have like two very small notes and then 2 pages of long of one note? It's not feasible. So actually it is feasible, but it's not a good user interface. So I'm going to put a comma in here, and I'm just going to use a property in our text called max lines, and I'm just going to say 1. And so as you'll see here, then what we're going to do is to make sure that the user kind of understands that there's more information in here than what we are rendering. So we want to put like ellipses at the end of the text that don't have enough space to render themselves fully. So we're going to say soft wrap. And as you can see, the information is whether the text should break at soft line breaks. So make sure that is true. And then we're going to say overflow. And we're going to say text overflow ellipses, like that. And now you can see it says here's a very long text, blah, 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 and then dot, dot, dot. So this is a good indication then to all users to know that, well, there's more information to be rendered, but there's not enough space for that information to be rendered on the screen right now. All right, so I mean, we've looked at how that all works. We've actually demoed it, so we don't have to do a separate demo for this. We've been looking at it as we've been developing the application, and that's one of the beauties of Flutter. So we don't have to do anything about this demo right now. And you will probably be surprised that this is all we have to do right now for the notes view. There's not much more to work on. We've written, we're able to at the moment create new notes, and we're able to display those notes and one at a time inside this list view builder. So you'll learn how to use a list view builder as well. And what we can do, as is a tradition, we're going to go and commit and tag our work. So I'm going to do some reshuffling on the screen so you see what I'm doing a little bit better. And I'm going to go to my built-in terminal here, and we're going to have a look at the status. I can see there are 2 files changed. So let's do git add all, and let's commit this as step 15. And before committing it, you can see your git log from before the last commit was step 14. So, and you can also look at all the tags, and we have up to tag 14. So let's go ahead and say git commit, and we do step 15. And then I'm going to push that commit to GitHub, or if you're using Bitbucket or any other provider, that's fine too. And I'm going to tag this as step 15, right? And then we're going to push our tags. Great, that part is now done. So we've done what we promised to do in this chapter. The next thing that we have to talk about, as is a tradition in all the other chapters, is at the end of every chapter, we talk about what we're going to talk about in the next chapter. And you can see that we're able to create notes We're not able yet to update notes. We're going to get there soon, but we also need to allow the user to delete notes. So that's exactly actually what we're going to take care of in the next chapter. And the next chapter is not going to be a huge chapter either, just like this one. So it's going to go very smooth. But we're going to do some quite heavy refactoring on our project, as you'll soon see. So grab some refreshments if you want, and I'll see you in the next chapter.